Tushavumilia mengi mengi, tatizo wewe na mimi kishenzi. See, I just want you, my baby, my baby. I can't lie, I love you, see, I'll be crazy. Tatizo mapenzi yashaniumiza mimi, nalalamika mimi. Chumbani nikilala na kuwazaga mimi. Ayawe, carry my head, ayawe, come Soweto. Ayawe, carry my head, ayawe, come Soweto. Tatizo mapenzi yashaniumiza mimi, nalalamika. Ayawe, carry my head, ayawe, come Soweto. Ayawe, carry my head, ayawe, come Soweto.
Moderator, personally, you said in my own opinion,
Yes.
the National Youth Council is always involved in the sensitization of the youth. So I think it is very better for the National Youth Council to promote the sensitization and then also get a hand in hand with the other organizations. An example in place is NIMD, the Netherlands Institute for Multi-Party Democracy. Most of the times, it comes in, it involves all parties, because as we all know, the National Youth Council has both all parties. It has NRM, it has NOP, it has PFF, it has the ONSA people who come on the independent tickets. So the National Youth Council helps in the sensitization, and then maybe it can also promote the advocacy and accountability. This helps in a way that, you know, when the National Youth Council advocates, an example in instance is the fact that we have 5 youth MPs in the whole of Uganda. Yet the youth are the ones that have the majority number. So it would be the role of the National Youth Council to at least involve in the members of parliament who pass the laws. At least, maybe in 2030, no, not right now, it is too late. Maybe in 2031, they can at least make sub-regional youth MPs, so that most of the youth are more involved in the political spaces. And then in the sensitization, the registers are always put out before the voting period. So it is also their role. Maybe an example is like maybe the publicity secretaries, to at least publicize such information to the youth deep down in the villages. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Andrina, for that. Mugisha, from the eye of the civil societies that are youth-led, and I do understand that perhaps you also have one that you lead, but also putting into the aspect of Pan-Africanism that you do represent or always tell us to be. What role do civil societies that are led by youth movements or youth members do play, particularly within the general elections, but also within the elections that are currently ongoing?
Thank you. Youth-led civil society organizations in Uganda play actually a very critical role in mostly expediting the civic consciousness or awareness to the masses, right? Mostly the young people. Just to give you a very small abstract, in the year 2000, between the year 2008 and the year 2015, the global attention changed or switched trajectory to the concept of youth empowerment globally. So for Uganda to have the 1993 National Youth Council Act, the Women's Act, and all these other things come into place, it was not a coincidence, right? It was not an action that was in isolation, right? There was a global rhetoric. Just like currently, and it saddens my heart to tell you that now the global rhetoric switched from the youth rhetoric, youth empowerment rhetoric, to climate change, climate justice, and climate adaptation, among other things. Like, that is the top-notch thing. Like, even in the civil society organizations, when you're writing the proposals, right, you know that those that are more inclined to things like climate change and all those things, it is more likely to get the eye of the powers that be, in this case what we call the donors. But now, this also brings us to a very interesting trajectory. When you look at the civil society organizations, youth-led civil society organizations in Uganda,
yes,
the question that would pop would be, who is the main funder of these youth-led organizations? The biggest, if not entirely, main funder of these organizations are donors from mostly the global north. And history has taught us that there is a certain group that I don't want to mention on air, but usually they give you with the right hand and they take with the left hand, right?
Yes.
So for every youth-led organization that has funding from the global north, it is not just funding to carry out the activities, but also there is that anecdotal philosophy behind. And now that leads to the question is now, does the government play a complementary role in empowering youth-led civil society organizations that are doing what she mentioned, bolstering civic education and consciousness among the masses, the youth, mobilizing youth to join or participate in government activities and programs, among others. But then there has been a very strong contradiction between those two actors in the last 10 years in this country. In 2015, when the NGO Act was passed, it created a couple of dimensions to the law which were hitherto unknown, or rather inexperienced to that. For example, then, to register your civil society organization, youth-led or otherwise, community-based, non-government or otherwise, it had to go through the Ministry of Internal Affairs, where they had to scrutinize, one, what are you going to do? Is it complementing government activities, or are you fighting us? 3, who is funding you?
Yes.
And the people are funding you, are they our friends, or are they counter-revolutionary? So this, for me, it brings an interesting dimension, because we're looking at the government, which is the main stakeholder in the youth empowerment dimension for in the country. We have civil society organizations which are playing a complementary role to the government, but they are not in bed with government. Actually, in the civil society circles, there is a joke that the government looks at civil society as evil society, right? So where does that C die from? The C dies to make it civil/evil. The C dies when the civil society organizations start asking for the accountability, which is many a time very hard for the government to produce, on areas that are key to youth empowerment. Things like, 1, youth economic empowerment, 2, youth access to education, skills training and apprenticeship, 3, youth access to sexual reproductive health rights, knowledge and information, among other things really. So, as we are going into the general elections, right, we are seeing that most civil society players are actually the ones that are carrying the mantle of lubricating the democratization process in the country. 2 weeks ago, the institution that she mentioned, the Netherlands Institute for Multi-Party Democracy, NIMD.
Yes.
It officiated the iPod conversation, right? NIMD is a conglomerate of, it's an organization from Netherlands. So, white people, in 2025, we, the young people, need now to sit and discuss how do we not run away from the system, but make the process more tangibly viable for the young people so that we can benefit as stakeholders, but also participate not as participants, but as the people that are intended for these programs and deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emanzi, for that. And you highlight quite a number of points, but we shall be getting back to that later. Edonu, from UNSA, but also from an outcry that Uganda is within the multi-party dispensation, and the issues around how independent the body is, but also how do you bring different political parties, students that represent different political parties on board. And equally, if you could highlight on the aspect that most of the times during these election periods, you find majority of the students actually at school and they do not vote. What recommendation or what contribution or what suggestion do you have around that circle?
Yeah, thank you so much, Tracy. Obviously, as the speaker to the association, it really breaks my heart when majority of the students do not have the opportunity and chance to exercise their mandate, which is constitutional. I strongly believe that we are missing a lot of leadership in these students, the ones we are supposed to empower. And of course, it's unfortunate that usually the roadmap for the past years hasn't been favorable. Remember also that education is key, and it's also something we cannot compromise on. However, also their participation is very key to the progress of this country. And that said, why is it that during the official presidential and member of parliament elections, these students are given an opportunity to stay home and exercise their rights. However, when it comes to them participating in the youth politics or youth structures, they do not have the chance. So these are conversations that are supposed to be held henceforth to ensure that we have their involvement very, very, very pertinent. Perhaps maybe we have to come up with a different structure that favors only the students, because if we are to involve them in the youth structures, some of us are privileged because we are lucky we are done with school and we are maybe in the holiday transitioning to other different avenues of life. Now, what happens to someone who is in senior 6 who wants to take part in the structures and take part in the democratic process of this country? How do we support them? How do we engage them? So I think there is much more that needs to be done in terms of engagement with the Electoral Commission and seeing how best we can have the students take part. Right now as I talk, most of the universities are having coursework. And so if you put up an election right now, there is no student who is going to accept to leave their coursework, forfeit their coursework for the sake of coming to take part in an electoral process of maybe 2 days, 3 days at the expense of their education. So we need to be very inclusive as much as we can, because we are saying how we engage and how we empower these people determines and shapes the future of the democratic process in this country. If it's going to be peaceful, if it's going to be inclusive in nature, but also if it's going to be participatory. So you do not expect me to be participatory and yet I am not exercising my rights. Firstly, if I want to be the one in the position of carrying out the exercise myself. So there is a vacuum that needs to be filled, and this is a mandate that the Electoral Commission, together with also the Parliament, they have to come up and see how best we can be so inclusive as we can, because we cannot talk about inclusion or participation when we are leaving out some other viable people who are very potential, who contribute to the narrative of this country. So I acknowledge the fact that there is that vacuum. I acknowledge the fact that the students are being left behind, except those ones who are defiant, who go out of their way and come and take part in these processes. So for me, it's a call for reforms. It's a call for a change to see to it that we have the students included, such that if we are having this period, the period has to be favorable to all those who qualify to participate in the exercise, whether they are in school or out of school, whether they're in their workplaces. And this cuts across. Even those in workplaces are being affected. I am very sure that you personally, you got affected. You got affected because you were at school, you get, and you didn't have the chance. We have missed out on your creme de la creme. And you are not alone. You're very many outside there. I said, out of over 15 million students, 22% are eligible to vote. So that's quite a huge number that could really change the trajectory in this country. So that is what I could say.
Interesting. Thank you so much for that. Andrina, from the perspective of women representation, but also inclusion within the democratic processes, and particularly the mandate given to the right to vote, and looking at young girls within rural communities, but also with their differences in terms of those with disabilities, expectant mothers, what role do you think that as young people we can do to bring them on board? Because you realize that during election period or voting days, usually those people do not vote. Those who vote, they are either carried from their home by the intending candidate, who hopes that this person will maybe take me. So what about those that are never interests of the candidates, but still have the mandate to vote?
Thank you so much, moderator. First of all, we would like to appreciate the government for they at least allowed the pregnant girls to go back to school. That is not bad of a move, surely. So in terms of people with disabilities and then women going to vote, expectant mothers, I think that is the role of the government that is where the youth come in and maybe demonstrate peacefully, disclaimer, demonstrate peacefully, yes, they should demonstrate peacefully to at least advocate for such a girl child, because we know there are organizations that come in for girl child, but now it is on the voting day. And we have to accept that when nature comes in, there's some things that are unavoidable. Because right now, if you're 8 months, maybe you got that child when it was a bad period. You find your 8 months and maybe 20 days, and voting is tomorrow. Surely, there is no remedy for you as a voter in that instance. That is the truth. Because first of all, we have to look at the economy. Right now, what does the government have in terms of its savings and everything? If you're to say that every pregnant woman, if the voting day is tomorrow and you're expecting you're going to give birth like the next day, the government is not going to come and be like, maybe if they can at least put some electoral staff in hospitals, maybe, if that is possible.
So, Andrina, when you look at countries like Ghana, Ghana has progressed in terms of digitalization of elections. Don't you think it could be one of those that Uganda should actually front? Because we can't say because someone is in a hospital, their right to vote has just been taken away, because eventually the decisions that are made will affect them most.
Thank you so much. If I got the question right, you said people deep down in villages.
Yes.
And as someone who comes from Kanungu, surely we know how many people have smartphones in villages. Unless there is a procedure that the government can use and you maybe tick somehow somewhere. But people in villages don't know how to use phones, smartphones, no offense.
Yes.
They don't have the money to afford those smartphones in the first place. Maybe if the government can come in, provide, maybe the Ministry of ICT, it provides those maybe gadgets to help during the electoral process, then that can do. But if it is said that every pregnant mother that is expecting that they have a right to vote, yes, we know. But then how? How is it practicable? Because right now we're looking at the election that is 3 months from now. I don't think that is practicable, like for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrina, for that. Emanzi, African Union Agenda 2063 does highlight about the importance of good governance, peace and security. Uganda, just like other countries within Africa, continue to suffer due to the global geopolitics. Election violence is one of those that we have decried day in, day out. Young people's role in fronting free and fair elections. The other time someone said there is a reason why it was called free and fair, not excellent and free. That sometimes when small issues come in, we should say it is free and fair. But to what extent do young people partake in the processes that they have to ensure there is fairness? Because usually we as young people are still the same vehicles of the violence that happens. So what do we need to do?
Well, what we need to do as young people, not to be violent, not to consume violent ideology, and to stay away from all triggers of violence in the electoral process. These are mentioned theoretically on TV. It sounds easy, right? But it's very difficult practically. I want to be honest with you.
Yes.
In 2019, the African Union set the theme of the year was silencing the guns. And therein, it was very critical on the aspect of having all countries that are going to have elections that year not to partake in electoral violence. But I can tell you that in 2019, the report from Afrobarometer that was released in 2020 June showed that all the elections that were held in 2019, the year of silencing the guns, actually there was a drop of 12% compared to other years, right? So to me, a drop of 12% is a huge stat for us to celebrate. But also most importantly, it goes back to, does that actually mean that the African Union as a Pan-Africanist institution still has the power, both morally and otherwise, to call the shots when it comes to how democracy and its tenets operate in especially sub-Saharan Africa.
Yes.
We are signatories to the African Continental Free Trade Area and also the African Union Agenda 2063. You mentioned the aspect of governance, which is actually in the second thematic area of the African Union Agenda 2063. Talks about good governance, a new Africa where we're going to govern ourselves based on one, our principles as black people, our values, and our guided by our history and our potential future. So, this is 2025. We are going to have an election next year, right?
Yes.
Yesterday, the CID, the head of CID, Tom Magambo, I don't know if I pronounced the name well. He was at the National Media Center calling on every person in Uganda not to partake in anything to do with violence in the forthcoming elections. So there, the government is playing its role, right? The Electoral Commission, which actually is the sponsor of this show, has been very critical in sending out messages of non-violence in the masses. But messages, there is something that has to come before the messaging or even after the messaging, because I don't think that it's not that the people have not gotten the message, but does this message resonate with a young person who believes that if I lose an election, the only alternative for me to get justice is violence? What brings a person to think like this? One, it could be the breakdown in judicial services where people cannot easily get retribution for their cases. Two, when we see the blatant cheating, lies, propaganda, blackmailing in the electoral process, this is another evident trigger of violence. And now the antidote to that goes back to the reason why the National Youth Council, the Uganda National Students Association, among others, were formulated, and one of the reasons why very many youth-led CSOs are in the area of governance, it comes back to the area of civic engagement. We have to train as much as we can using a bottom-top approach, because many a time we use the top-bottom approach, there is a backfire. We need a new Africa, leave alone a new Uganda. A new Africa where we partake, yes, where we engage in a process, knowing that regardless, if she beats me in an election, I'm going to go back to look at what the mistakes that I made that could have cost me, not hiring goons to beat her or malign her or, you know, do all those kind of things. And now there is this rhetoric that is running around, especially from opposition camps. Leaders there are saying, every candidate have a gari. Now, for you watching us, a gari, they don't mean the bicycle. They mean to have an entourage, a large entourage that you move with. But now, from what we've seen lately, these gari things, mostly they are rowdy, there is indiscipline, right? And there is a lot of commotion. So, can we counter that narrative from the leaders that we have that are pushing for that, so that we can neutralize some of the triggers of electoral violence, among other things? I beg to take my leave. Thank you.
Wow. Edonu, when you talk about elections, there must be legal protection. The Electoral Commission Act and all those other statutes. Amazingly, over time we continue to see young people being used as, for example, you're a young person, you're given 20,000 to be an agent of an individual, but your role is primarily either to cause violence or to make sure that whichever means it is in favor of your candidate. Before you know it, people are throwing stones at each other, and before you know it, you're on a police vehicle to the police. But also, in regards to sensitization and civic education that we are talking about, why do we have to talk about it now? I mean, we had all 5 years. The aspect that we do wait for when elections are this year to start talking about civic engagement, voter registration, voter participation, not to bribery. Are we underscoring or is it intentional?
Yeah, I think I would love to say that to some extent, this information has been circulating for the past 2 years. Sadly, I could say that we do not want to equip ourselves as young people with all the available knowledge that we need at our disposal. However, that said, since we are having this kind of engagement, I think this is a turning point and a stepping stone for us. These platforms have been created for us to ensure that we start discussing these things early enough if we are going to shape the narrative of this country. Now, one thing I want the young people outside there to know is that elections are not war. That's one thing we need to first embrace.
Yes.
They are a choice. And why I say so is that leveraging on the large block of numbers that we have, if young people, you and I, all of us here, choose peace and reject manipulation, then we safeguard our future. That is something that I want us to know. It is sad that instead of us being the agents of peace, we have been turned into the perpetrators of violence in most of this electoral process, and it's so sad. The bit about it is that a few of us who have gone to school have chosen to let go of the violence. But of course, like you said, and my brother Imanzi said, when you have weak institutions in a particular country, that says it also promotes the rule of law, and yet it's at the peak of not embracing the rule of law, then we trigger, we trigger the young people, we trigger whoever is supposed to ensure that we have a peaceful processes whenever we are conducting our democratic processes. So I want to say that it is very important for us to start having these discussions as early as now, because we now already know that the next election is taking place in 2031, as long as the constitution is not amended. So we have to be at the forefront, we as young people. We have to accept and acknowledge that we have to put our differences aside and speak as one, as a whole, and ensure that in everything we do, regardless of the outcome of the election, we should be the ones fronting for peaceful electoral processes. We shouldn't be seen at the forefront of violence. Because, like I said, if we choose violence, then that means that our future is at stake. But I'm very, very optimistic that even as time goes on, like we're having the discussion right now, this is a step towards us having people embrace peace. But it's very, 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 very key. I think for me, it's very important to start having electoral civic education as early as in primary schools, such that people come with a conscience, a clean conscience, knowing that this is how an electoral process has to be conducted or has to be facilitated. It is not about bloodshed, but rather about harmony. You accept defeat in peace, but not restoring to using extreme measures to air out your grievances. So I think that's what I could share for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Edonu, for that. I'm going to read some of the comments coming in on our WhatsApp, and this is Dennis Basimwe, who is the youth chairperson of Buhweju district. So Dennis says that as we come towards general elections, youth structures play significant and important roles such as civic engagement, and under here he states that youth structures can promote civic engagement and participation among young people, but also this includes encouraging young people to register to vote, participate in campaigns, and hold leaders accountable. He also talks about the role of young people in mobilization, and he states that youth structures can mobilize young people to participate in the electoral process, but also including participating in campaigns. And then lastly, he talks about campaign activities, where youth must participate in structures by mobilizing fellow young people to support their preferred candidates. Thank you so much, Dennis, for that comment. Getting back to you, Andrina, the challenges that we face, who are you calling upon on this show, but also who do you think are the stakeholders that we can reach out to ensure that they give a helping hand in what we intend to do to the community in terms of advocacy around voter and civic engagement towards elections?
Thank you so much, moderator. We call upon the government as a whole. You know, all these ministries work hand in hand. The Ministry of Justice can come in to help in the human rights perspective during the elections, and maybe the ICT people can come in to help in terms of the issue talked about of those in labor and those that can't come to the polling stations due to reasonable grievances. And so I call upon the government, the non-government organizations as well to come in and chip in. Then also the national youth structures.
Yes.
In this instance, the National Youth Council. Because as we well know, the National Youth Council has 3 people per district. The district has 9 people on the committee. It pushes up to the sub-count, up to the parish, up to the village. So those are very many people. So as youth leaders, we call upon each and every one to at least chip in terms of the general elections that are upcoming. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrina. Mugisha, during youth elections, I have seen a lot of commercialization. Now, when you talk about us as young people being agents of stopping the challenges that we think, while during our own elections as young people, we are the frontliners of if you don't have money, no votes for you. How far or what needs to be done and to what extent to ensure that young people address issues of leadership and governance that is actually leadership and governance, not one that is yielded because of being the highest bidder?
Thank you. The aspect of commercialization of elections in Uganda, I think now, is the biggest elephant in the room when we are talking about democracy in our country. Before we actually go to the youth dishing out a lot of money and all that during the youth elections, let us first look at what happened prior to that. Actually, even prior to these elections, we've seen incumbents mostly dishing out a lot of money, which is not illegal to start with, right? Though
bribery is an offense.
Bribery is illegal if you bring it from the form of bribery, bribing of voters. However, me as say I'm the Minister of Finance, I'm still going to run for parliamentary seat. I invite people over at my house and we discuss our things. It is something that we have normalized, you get? And one time I was discussing this and I said, wherever there is a vacuum of a coherent ideology, right?
Yes.
It becomes very easy for the masses to go with who is the highest bidder, because now it ceases to become a contention of ideas, and then it morphs, or rather it morphs into a contestation of who has the most money. And now, if those that have the most money are the people that are going to make rules for you, trust me, they will not make the rules or they will not pass the policies with the people that they bribed as the top of their interest. It will be their personal interests. So this is a cancer we have to fight. But how do we fight it? We just can't think about it. We need to amend the electoral law. This is something that we have to talk about from a serious perspective, because it was actually proposed by one Honorable Matthias Mpuga. He tabled the motion of electoral reforms, but they did not see the light of the day. And for me, I think from the policy point of view, that is where we start from. Yeah, we can have the street talk, we can have the hashtags, Juinini, but if it is not backed by a policy alternative or an electoral reform at parliamentary level, we are still going to see actually worse than what is happening right now. Okay? And that is a very bad sign for the growth of our democracy, because then it places incompetent leaders at the helm of decision making. Now, what happens when you have incompetent leaders? That means that they're going to pass laws that are not coherent with aspirations of the national development. And this is why you start finding things like, okay, one group has been marginalized, especially the youth, women, children, among other, I don't want to use the word vulnerable groups, but you get
elderly,
so
yes.
The elderly, yes. So, we need a presidential directive. Because last time General Museveni mentioned, and he was like, hey, but you people, where is this money coming from? But to me, as the commander-in-chief and also the chief executive of the country, he can pass a directive to have, one, the law amended, but also internally at the political party level, the vetting process has to be more concentrated on the values, ideals, and the ideological predisposition of the person that is running for office vis-a-vis their bank account. But money is good. We all have to make money, because when you make money, you call shots. And I think that is one of the reasons why in the recent tours of the PDM by General Museveni, he was encouraging as many people to get into the money economy, because apparently there is a threshold of 37% Ugandans that are not in the money economy. And as long as we have that group not there, that means that the rest, right, the 63 is carrying a very big burden. And we all know that the economic growth and the democracy, they have a bitter-sweet relationship that we have to curate as a nation. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Emanzi. Now, our time is really fast spent, but I'm going to get our parting shots, and I'll start it off with you, Edono.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn, for hosting us and having us today on their show. My parting shot this evening to the young people and the viewers out there is that let us be at the front line of peace as we are heading into this electoral period. However, it is always your constitutional right to take part in an electoral process. You have a right to go and vote. I know that there are shortfalls that we have as a country, but that shouldn't take away the hope, the little hope that you have to go and exercise your mandate. So it's my call to each and every one of you that please be a very active participant in this whole electoral process. Because if you do not take part, then you're going to be speaking and lamenting for the next 5 years. And that won't help us. It won't change anything. You must exercise your vote so that you can hold these people accountable. And that said, I want to thank you all, but most importantly, I join the African continent in mourning the loss of Baba Raila Odinga. May his soul rest in eternal peace.
Thank you so much, Edono, for that. We pray that his soul rests in peace, and also appreciate his contribution towards the global development in terms of democracy. Andrina, your parting shots.
Thank you so much, moderator. All I can tell our viewers is we have to be patriotic. Let's love our country. Let's get involved in the political period, because after all, like our friend already said, we shall either suffer or enjoy the next 5 years. So I call upon the youth, for we are the majority, at least participate in this political period and give the best of the leaders that are there. Thank you.
As brief as that. Emanzi, your parting shots in regards to the conversation and anything you feel could have left.
The things that I feel I could have left are too many. I won't go there now. But yeah, in my parting shots, there is 3 things that I'd like to highlight mostly.
Yes.
1, institutions grow the nation. We have to strengthen our institutions as a country if we want to have this, what we're debating today, as a story of the past. Secondly, Uganda and Africa, let us embrace the new wave of artificial intelligence in its entirety. Because like she was mentioning, a pregnant lady will want to vote, but she can't because she's being prevented by a natural cause. How about if they can actually vote in the hospital using a digital platform? So these, I think, are triggers of conversations that we ought to have, because now the system is morphing from what we knew into something that is more complex and needs our urgent attention as young people. It needs our utmost knowledge, and most importantly, our consciousness has to be curated in the line of defending Africa, its values and interests, and also promoting the values and our aspirations as Black people. As we are going into these general elections, young people of Uganda and those in Africa, let us vote for the leaders that talk to us, talk to those things that hurt us on a personal level as the young people of this country. Any person that is talking about youth economic empowerment, any person that is talking about protection of the environment, climate change, adaptation, and sustainability, any person that is talking about embracing of science, technology, math, and AI, let us embrace these conversations. Let us be peaceful, but most importantly, let us organize and not antagonize. Black Power.
Thank you so much, Emanzi, for that. When you're talking about institutions, it reminded me of the book Why Nations Fail. And yes, part of the things really emphasized is the aspect of institutions. How far we can go with inclusive institutions, not just institutions. Is it education system? Is it security? Is it elections? All that. The further or the best we include people, the more we are likely to face challenges. And the more we exclude people, then the more issues we actually bring on board. So I would recommend you to read the book Why Nations Fail. But also, if you've been following us, this is Youth of Purpose, and of course we've been having Mugisha Emanzi, who is a Pan-Africanist and also has been representing the civil society organizations that are youth-led. We've been having Andrina. Andrina is the Secretary for Finance, Kanungu District, and also a youth leader in the National Youth Council. We've been having Edonu Emmanuel, who is the current speaker for UNSA, and UNSA is Uganda National Students Association, and also who has been able to give his recommendations in terms of what needs to be done in representation of young people and our role that we must play. Take home is that as young people, we have the capacity, we have the mandate to do something. Do not watch and wait for things to be done. If it means you carrying your grandmother to the voting station, do so, as long as her right is really appreciated. But also part of the other recommendation is that we should not be agents of violence, but we should actually be agents of those who promote or advocate for fairness, equality, and equity in all that we do. And of course, it's been me, Tracy Lynn Ankunda, that hosts this conversation that happens every Wednesday at 9 p.m. We want to thank the team behind the production for the amazing work that you do, but also to thank you 24 for giving us this platform. See you next time, same place.
Youth of Purpose.